Sometimes family first feels like a trap. We're told to forgive, to sacrifice, to stay silent, all in the name of blood ties. But what if family is the very reason you're breaking? In this video, you'll hear 3 true in-depth stories of people who said no. No to unfair demands, no to being used, no to being the only one trying. They didn't yell, they didn't fight, they just walked away and never looked back. Angela always knew her childhood wasn't normal, but she didn't have the words for it until much later. She used to think everyone packed lunch for their siblings before going to school or ran home fast to make sure their little brothers didn't burn the house down. She thought maybe that was just what being the big sister meant. Her mom was a single parent. Her dad left when Angela was 10. She remembered the day clearly, the screaming, the suitcase, the silence that followed. After that, things changed quickly. Her mom took on more shifts. Angela, in turn, took on more of everything else. By 12, she was helping with homework, making dinner, and calling in sick for her mom when the boys were too sick to go to school. By 15, she had learned to do the groceries on a tight budget and soothe nightmares in the middle of the night. She never got in trouble. Not because she was perfect, but because there wasn't time to rebel. And she didn't resent it, at least not then. There was love, too. Her brothers adored her. Her mom, though often distant or tired, would sometimes say, "I don't know what I'd do without you." And Angela would glow with that quiet pride only children of chaos understand. In college, she moved 2 hours away. It felt like another planet. She shared a tiny dorm room with peeling paint, studied like her life depended on it, and worked night shifts at the library. For the first time in her life, no one needed her every minute. She could breathe. She could think. She could sleep. She still called home, still sent her brother's birthday cards, but she kept that new life separate. She needed that space to figure out who she was when she wasn't being needed. Then came the kitchen table conversation. She had just graduated, just landed a decent job at a small design firm, just signed a lease on a 1-bedroom apartment. It was the first place she'd ever lived alone. She went back home for a weekend. It wasn't a special occasion, just a check-in. Her mother made tea. The boys were out. The sun was setting in that orange-pink way that made everything seem calmer than it was. Her mother sat down and said, "You need to move back." Angela blinked. "Why?" "Your brothers need you." "I'm drowning, Angie. I can't do this alone anymore." The room was quiet, but Angela's mind was loud. She thought she misheard. "You mean move back home, like live here?" Her mother nodded, wiping her eyes. "Just for a year, maybe 2, until they're older." Angela looked around. Same furniture, same wallpaper, same suffocation. "I can't," she said, her voice softer than she expected. Her mother stared at her like she was speaking another language. "You're selfish. After everything I did for you." Angela didn't yell. She didn't cry. She just stood up and said, "I already raised them once. I'm not doing it again." She left the next morning. No fight, no drama, just a long, quiet drive back to the life she'd built on her own. Her mother didn't call for weeks, then months. Then years. Angela sent gifts on birthdays, small things, gift cards, books, things she knew the boys would use. But she never heard back. The silence felt like punishment at first, but eventually it became peace. She moved cities, got promoted, found a rhythm that didn't include crisis, made friends who asked how she was not what she could do for them. Sometimes guilt would sneak in. At 2 a.m. or on holidays or when she passed school supplies in a store. She wondered if her brothers hated her, if they felt abandoned. But then she'd remember she was a child once too, and no one saved her. One night she got a message on Facebook. Her youngest brother, now 17, wrote, Hey, I just wanted to say thanks. I know you were more like a mom than a sister. I remember. Angela stared at the screen for a long time before replying. I remember too. And I'm sorry I had to leave, but I'm proud of you. Always. She didn't expect a reply, but it came. It's okay. You taught me how to make eggs. That saved me more times than you know. Angela smiled. She hadn't made eggs in years. She realized then that love the real kind survives even distance. Her mother never apologized. That conversation never happened again. But Angela stopped needing it. She walked through her apartment, small, clean, full of plants and soft music, and she felt something she hadn't known she'd lost ownership. Not of a place, but of her life. She didn't hate her family. She just stopped making herself small to fit inside their expectations. Not every child is meant to be a parent, especially not twice. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away before the cycle pulls you back in. Story 2. The Brother Behind Bars. Marcus was the youngest of 3 sons in a blue-collar Pennsylvania household. He had grown up watching 2 very different versions of what it meant to be a brother, one rooted in responsibility, the other in recklessness. The eldest, Kyle, was the achiever. Dependable, disciplined, and protective, he had carved his own path early on and stayed on it. Then there was Darren, the middle child, who seemed to live by no rule but his own. He was impulsive, charismatic, and constantly in trouble. Their parents, hard-working and often overwhelmed, had a soft spot for Darren. Every mistake he made, from underage drinking to theft, from dropped-out dreams to failed jobs, was met with a chorus of justifications. He's struggling, they'd say. He just needs more support. What started as sympathy morphed into a pattern of excuse and rescue. And for years, Marcus observed it all silently, choosing stability over chaos, self-reliance over drama. By the time Marcus turned 34, he had built a quiet life, steady job, modest apartment, no debts, no scandals, no one leaning too hard on him until the day he got the call. Darren had been arrested again. This time it wasn't for shoplifting or public intoxication. He had driven under the influence with a suspended license, sped through a red light, and nearly hit a mother and her child at a crosswalk. Thankfully, no one was injured, but the police weren't offering another slap on the wrist. Bail was set at $15,000 cash only. Marcus's parents didn't ask. They expected. Kyle, having already covered for Darren in the past, financially and emotionally refused to do it again. That left Marcus. His mother's voice trembled over the phone. He needs his family. You have the means to help. Please. His father was blunter. You always say you care, then show it. Marcus didn't raise his voice. He didn't blame anyone. He simply said no. He explained that he couldn't keep enabling Darren's choices, that consequences might be the only thing left to reach him, that giving money didn't equal love, and withholding it wasn't hate. The silence on the other end of the call lasted too long. Then came the reaction. You're cold, his mother said between tears. He's your brother. His father added, You've turned your back on your own blood. Shameful. They hung up before Marcus could say anything more. Over the following weeks, the family's temperature shifted. Darren didn't call. But eventually a voicemail arrived. You made your point. I get it. Don't worry, I won't ask again. He pled guilty and spent 5 months in county jail. When released, he moved in with a friend, not family. His parents spoke of it only once, briefly, bitterly, during Thanksgiving. Marcus, meanwhile, wrestled with a gnawing uncertainty. Not guilt, exactly, more a chronic ache of doubt. Had he done the right thing by letting Darren face consequences, or had he simply refused a brother in crisis? The divide in the family remained. His mother answered phone calls, but they didn't linger. His father spoke only when necessary. and any mention of Darren carried an unspoken accusation. Friends Marcus confided in were split. Some praised him for setting a boundary. Others wondered aloud if he'd regret it someday. But none of them had lived through decades of the same loop. Darren got in trouble. Someone bailed him out. He promised to change. He didn't. Rinse and repeat. At what point does loyalty become self-destruction? A year later, Marcus still hasn't seen his brother. They live in the same city, but worlds apart. Their parents continue to hold out hope for a reunion, one that Marcus quietly suspects will never come. When asked, he doesn't badmouth Darren. He doesn't defend his own actions either. He just says, "Everyone has a breaking point. That was mine." To outsiders, it may seem harsh, heartless even. A man with means refusing to save his brother from jail. But to those who know the full history, the question isn't whether Marcus made the right decision. It's whether anyone else would have lasted as long. Was he disloyal? Or finally protecting himself right? Or so wrong? You decide. Story 3. The Daughter Who Said No. Claire was raised in a house where silence spoke louder than words. Her parents, Robert and Linda, had never been abusive in the way most people understood it. There were no bruises, no yelling matches heard by the neighbors, no broken plates or locked doors. But there was distance, an emotional coldness so thick it clung to every corner of the house like winter fog. Robert worked long hours at a logistics warehouse. Linda stayed home but never seemed present. She wasn't unkind, just absent. Claire often described her childhood as being raised by people who fed and clothed me, but never really saw me. Birthdays came and went without parties. Report cards with straight A's were met with nods, not praise. When Claire had her first anxiety attack at 13 and tried to talk about it, her mother responded with a curt, "You're too sensitive." Her father didn't look up from the evening news. By the time she reached adulthood, Claire had learned not to expect emotional support from her family. She didn't rebel or lash out, she simply planned her exit. She took out student loans, got a part-time job, and left for college 2 states away. She never moved back. Over the next decade, Claire built her life from the ground up. She earned a degree in finance, secured a job at a reputable firm, and slowly chipped away at the debt that followed her into adulthood. She sent polite texts to her parents during holidays, occasionally answered calls, but kept the relationship surface level. It wasn't that she hated them. She just couldn't pretend they'd been the kind of parents who'd earned a deeper connection. Then came the phone call. Claire was 33 when her mother called and said without preamble, "We're going to need help with the house soon." Claire blinked. "What kind of help?" "Retirement help," Linda clarified. "Your dad's knees are bad. I've been having dizzy spells. We'll need support. Financially." It wasn't a question. It was a statement. Claire paused, the silence stretching long. "Are you asking me to support you financially?" "Well, you're the only one doing well," her mother replied. "We're family." Something in Claire's chest tightened. "You never helped me," she said carefully. "You never even asked how I was getting by all those years." Her mother scoffed. "That's ancient history. We did what we could. You're acting like we abused you or something." Claire didn't respond. Not then. She ended the call, quickly said she needed time to think. But what she needed was clarity. She took a week to weigh at every memory, every phone call, every empty seat at school recitals, every dismissed emotion, every time she sat in the dark, wondering if her parents ever truly liked her. They had provided food, shelter, the bare necessities. But what they hadn't given love, presence, safety was the kind of support that shaped a child's entire understanding of self-worth. Now they wanted financial support not out of mutual care, but because she had become successful. Claire made a decision. She sent an email. Not a call, not a text, An email. After careful thought, I've decided I will not be contributing financially to your retirement. I understand this may be disappointing, but I believe it's a boundary I need to maintain for my own well-being. I wish you both stability and peace moving forward. The response came the next day from her father. We took care of you for 18 years. The least you could do is not abandon us now. You're ungrateful, Claire. That was the last thing he said to her for 2 years. Word spread to the extended family. An aunt called to say she was being selfish. A cousin messaged, they weren't that bad. An old neighbor even chimed in with some people would kill to have parents still alive to help. Claire didn't reply to any of them. It wasn't about vengeance. It wasn't even about resentment. It was about survival. The truth no one seemed to understand was this: Claire had been abandoned just far earlier, when she was a child looking for affection and getting silence, when she was a teenager desperate for reassurance and getting lectures, when she moved out and no one asked how she was doing. Now that she had something to offer, suddenly, she was family again. 2 years later, Claire's parents sold their house and moved into a modest apartment complex for seniors. She heard through a cousin that her father's health was declining. Her mother still told anyone who'd listen that Claire had cut them off for no reason. Claire never argued back. She simply kept living. She adopted a rescue dog. She got promoted. She started volunteering at a literacy center, mentoring kids who reminded her of herself, quiet, invisible, and far too grown for their age. One day, a teenage girl she was helping asked her, "Do you talk to your mom and dad?" Claire hesitated, then answered honestly, "Not really." "Why?" Claire thought for a long moment before saying, "Because sometimes the people who raised you weren't the ones who saw you." The girl didn't ask more, but she nodded as if she understood. And maybe that was the point. Did Claire fail her parents? Or did they fail her first, right, or so wrong? You decide. In each of these stories, saying no wasn't easy. Whether it was refusing to raise someone else's kids, turning away from a reckless sibling, or drawing a boundary with the very parents who raised them, these people made a choice that shook their families to the core. Were they being heartless, or finally protecting themselves? Right or so wrong? You decide.